Hey, it's me again. I'm a tad bit upset as usual. This time, it's about the Big Bang Theory, not the show. The, don't start talking to me about the show in the comments, please. Please. Um, I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out where the Big Bang Theory show came from. What I'm talking about is people using the Big Bang Theory as an excuse as to why God exists or why science is stupid. Because there is there are scientific speculations on how the Big Bang started, but there's no way to observe it. There's no way to observe any of those speculations. There's also no way to observe the um, the Big Bang itself, which is um, kind of a problem. But we have reason to believe that the Big Bang happened because the universe is moving outward. All particles, all matter, all mass in the universe is moving outward from what we call the universal central point. And we've created something of a map of the universe. There's a very sketchy looking picture, 3D picture. But it's always the same every time I see it. It's never too it's not like there are a bunch of different ways of drawing it. There's a scientific consensus on what is likely the shape of the universe. Just like there used to be a scientific consensus. No, that there was no consensus. Every time you looked at a world map, it was different. So never mind. Um, but at the moment, we have a decent idea of what we think the universe probably looks like and where the universe probably exploded from. And I don't like to call it an explosion because explosion creates the image of a big fiery Hollywood, lots of smoke kind of explosion that's just unrealistic and not what the Big Bang was. The Big Bang, as I understand it, as I have learned it, um, began with all matter energy, not matter and energy, matter energy, which is not a thing that we know of as still existing, in a point no larger than an electron. And an electron is the smallest subatomic particle, um, other than, I guess, the subatomic particles, which are quarks and bosons and all those things. Um, which means that the entire universe was no bigger than that, no bigger than an electron, which is obviously much too small to see. Duh. Because if it was big enough to see, we would be giants. We would be all bloated. Off topic. Um, but nobody knows where that came from. That little point that expanded very quickly into the universe that we know. Well, not immediately expanding and then all of a sudden Earth was there. It expanded into hydrogen gas, which then gradually over time shaped into gigantic stars with which imploded and exploded simultaneously. Like the outer shell dispersed, then the inner part became a black hole, and that disk of hydrogen and helium around it formed into stars, like the one that we orbit now. And that's the creation of the cosmos as we likely the creation of the cosmos as we know it, because uh, most, if not all, galaxies orbit around a black hole at the center. Or it has been speculated, and scientists think that they can see the massive black hole at the center of the Milky Way. Now, going backwards to that um, infinitely small and that infinitely small particle of matter energy with only one force applying to it. It's not gravity, it's not electromagnetism, it's not the weak force, and it's not the strong nuclear force. It's just force. We have no idea what it is. Scientists have no idea what it is. I'm not a scientist. I can't speak for them. But uh, I have seen enough research, read enough articles written by professional scientists of all different groups, to know that this infinitely small thing is likely the first thing in this universe. And also going forward at the same time, scientists have speculated that it is possible that the universe's expansion will slow and then reverse, and the universe will gradually come together into a point, just like the Big Bang. Scientists have also speculated that time is not linear. It does not move from cause to effect. It could be a loop. This could be the same universe that's existed forever. The only universe. There's a possibility, not a strong possibility. There's a possibility that it has just been repeating its timeline endlessly, expanding, and this thing that is happening right now, me speaking to you on the internet, has happened a billion times before and will happen a billion trillion infinite possibly times more in the future, which is the present. The future, which is the present, and the past, which is the present. If time is a loop, which it sounds incredibly unlikely given the nature of time as we observe it. Because time four-dimensionally can be compared to one dimension, a line, straight across. It moves forward and it moves backward. Well, time moves forward as we observe it. And we can jump, and if we were four-dimensional beings, we could jump from one point in time to another and observe. We could not change anything. We could not change our futures. We could just observe, and if we went back to our own time, nothing would be changed. 5 dimensions, however, that's when things start getting interesting. You start getting branch-off possibilities, which are overlapping universes. Overlapping universes. An interesting concept. Now, these aren't overlapping universes like I could go to one of these and all of a sudden everybody's a fish. Everybody's a giant walking, talking, blubbing fish. No. 5-dimensional travel means that you can hop between different possibilities of reality in which you can exist. I could go to a universe in which I didn't choose to talk to you guys on the internet, in which I didn't choose to do this vlog, and I would just be there. I would be observing. But that universe would have the same source, the same branch-off point as this universe in which I am talking to you. 6 dimensions. Now that is where you get into fish people, or flying spaghetti monsters if you really want to go there. So all these different possibilities, all these different outcomes of the universe we live in are still locked within the same coming together, breaking apart, coming together, breaking apart of the universe, if that is how the universe works. There is no observation of that happening, just like we have never once observed the orbit of a full orbit of Pluto. We haven't even known about it for 200 years. No, we've known about it for much less than 200 years. But it takes 200 years, supposedly, for it to orbit. How do we know this? Because we know how to calculate things based on the laws of physics and math. Math, of all things. Isn't it surprising that math is the answer? Not really. Of course not. Math is the logic of numbers. If everything could be put into numbers, which it probably can, then that would just make things so much easier to prove and disprove. Unfortunately, we do not have the capacity as humans to put every single aspect of our life into numbers, to the point that we can't even we cannot predict the movements of an electron. Oh well. Do we really care? Some of us do. I've strayed very far from the point, haven't I? Okay, so the fact that we have no way of knowing what came before the Big Bang is not proof that some divine power or some superior being or some superior just floating intellect, whatever that means, created us. String theory suggests 11-dimensional membranes called branes, branes, which are constantly moving in and out of dimensions. And when they come through and contact one another, the point of impact is a Big Bang. Because those membranes are made of matter energy. And when they collide, they rub off on each other. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. But that little bit was enough to cause a Big Bang, which branched out which went out into the one-dimensional universe, and then spread into the two dimensionals of flat worlds, and 3 dimensions, all in a single instant. And then we start getting into the 4th dimension. It gains time. The longer it exists, the more time it gains in existence. Of course, if time is going backwards to some other person's perspective, and we are actually moving backwards through our lives, then we are actually going backwards towards the big crush. But we perceive it in the opposite direction. And I haven't even gotten to the 5th and 6th dimensions. Once I get into the 7th dimension, it gets a little fuzzy even for me. But I understand the first 6 fairly decently. And then we get to gravity. The weakest of forces, but the most obvious. If I drop this pen, it drops. It goes down towards the massive object we call Earth. But that is such a weak force that pulls it down. You know what stops it when it hit my desk and bounced off and stopped it when it hit the floor? Electromagnetism between the atoms and molecules of the wood in the desk and the floor. That's what stopped it from going through. What holds the atoms and molecules together? Well, the molecules are held together by electromagnetism and sharing electrons and stuff. But the atoms are held together by the strong nuclear and the weak force. Which means I can't break apart the atoms in this desk by tapping it. Gravity is the weakest force, most likely because it's dispersed between all of the dimensions. Gravity affects all possibilities, all dimensions, all realities. It is made up of strings, which are closed loops. Now, if the 6th dimension provides fish people, what do the dimensions above that provide? And once you get to 11 and maybe 12, I'm pretty sure there's only 11 though, but 11th dimension, you get membranes, inconceivable things that we can only give a name and then a supposed form. All the stuff in between there, all these possibilities of things that might exist, might not. This is dragging very far away from my original point. But all this was created by an explosion. And if that's God, that's pretty amazing. If that's a consciousness doing this. And it's pretty messed up that it's such a bad system if a consciousness designed it. If I were some supreme being, life would be different. Gravity would be optional. I would make it so that we didn't have to eat unless we really wanted to. We didn't have to use the bathroom ever, because that's never pleasant. Unless you're into that, but that's creepy. I mean, if there were a supreme being that managed to create all these dimensions, all this depth to the infinite possibilities of this universe, let alone the multiverse, if I were some supreme being, why would I care about humans? I would create them. I would give them a good system and way of living. I would allow them to grow limbs at will if I created you guys, us humans, because we're not all guys, obviously. So Why does it make any sense that a supreme being created this endless universe? Created the membranes that created this endless universe? Why would that make any sense in any context? So that's what I'm a bit upset about. People who are so arrogant to think that they were created specially by a supreme being.